Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is a particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Arwin trying to get in right in the middle of my introduction, of course, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to have you all. Everybody nicely warmed up. Been given a piece of information in the pre-show that was quite a revelation in terms of... maybe I'll let Zygote summarise it, as he's done it 3 times. I'm sure he's a dab hand at summarising his own point.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, this is a find from a law book, or actually dictionary of international law. And I posted the citations on the... Well, I guess you reposted them so people can find them. But it's originally on the Ballbusters live stream. So what's being said here is basically that the when the International Court of Justice adjudicates disputes between states on their territorial limits, they use a method which is the same method that basically, or how would you describe the method? Method of positioning a point or object at sea.
You mean celestial navigation?
Yeah. Well, it has to be that, right? Because, okay, anyways, so the citations are there, the documents where these come from are there, but the method is called arcs of circles, and I guess that's a legal term of art for this specific method, but the citation is arcs of circles, a method which is constantly used for determining the position of a point or object at sea, is a new technique insofar as it is a method for delimiting the territorial sea. And that quote is from an International Court of Justice case where they actually decided on some boundaries on the sea. So they basically say that the method they used is this method, which cannot work on a ball. And then there's another citation which is gives a little bit different perspective to it, but this is from a commentary by the International Law Commission on what then became the Geneva Convention on the Territorial Sea and the contiguous zone, the treaty. So the quote is, capital T being breadth of the territorial sea, the line, all the points of which are at a distance of t miles from the nearest point of the coast, may be obtained by means of a continuous series of arcs of circles drawn with a radius of t miles from all points on the coastline. The outer limit of the territorial sea is formed by the most seaward arcs. In the case of a rugged coast, this line, although undulating, will be less of a zigzag than if it followed all the sinuosities of the coast. because the circles drawn from those points on the coast where it is most deeply indented will not usually affect the outer limit of the seaward arcs. In the case of a straight coast, or if the straight baseline method is followed, the arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line. End of quote. So basically what this says is that when countries go to court to decide where their boundaries are, they use a method which doesn't work on a ball.
Epic. Thank you for summarising it so beautifully. I'm glad you went through it a couple of times on the pre-show because that was a really concise summary for the live audience. Brilliant. Thank you for exposing it to us. And thanks to Adam who posted the original document where it came from. I couldn't find it while I was scrolling through, but I'm sure someone will highlight it and this will get more attention moving forward, I'm certain. So yeah, it's just another expose of how the Earth is obviously observably, measurably and legally flat.
Legally. Great.
Be interesting to see Sleeping Warrior's take on this. Hopefully he'll get his eyes over it at some stage and then give his opinion. We'll see. Thank you again, Zygote.
Thanks.
Any evidence?
Well, it caught my eye. It caught my eye because I've been following your show for many years. So, thank you.
That's probably a testament to 10th Man then in this respect, because it's him that's focused on this since, well, before during the, while we were looking at the Black Swan, that's when 10th Man started looking at this. And then tentatively at the start of this year, he started presenting some of the information he'd been sharing with us behind the scenes to the pre-show audience and members, etc. And, dedicated fans who subscribe to my second channel. But that was tentative and has been dripped out slowly. And then sort of middle of this year, it's been segued onto the live show. And then now we are where we're at with, legal documents coming to light that show that, when in terms of how you would negotiate legally boundaries, you're going to do that using the same method that the celestial navigators use. And you've got a straight baseline. You've got a flat baseline. That's what they're talking about. So it's flat. Earth's flat.
You can add to your saying navigationally and legally flat now.
Right on. Yeah. So pretty cut and shut. Go ahead. Sorry.
There's couple of details there that I don't know. What's your take on the word that I cannot pronounce? When they speak about this.
Okay.
Undulating.
Undulations is moving up and down like the hills. Yeah?
Yeah. So if they acknowledge that, aren't they acknowledging that there are elevation differences?
Precisely. So they're saying that there's elevation changes in terms of the topography, which is kind of, if you listen to Bev, when people misrepresent Bev, try thinking, because he doesn't declare to be a flat earther, contextually meaning I don't have a map and model and all sorts of other crazy crap that comes along with that stereotype of being a flat earther. Now, he also says you can demonstrate the Earth's not flat because of, let's phrase it, undulations, if you will. So, by that standard, it's like, well, what do you mean flat? Nothing's perfectly flat. We don't have a perfectly flat Earth. It's not two-dimensional. We've got undulating land. But in terms of what you're asking further to that, well, that's an elevation change. Well, that would be an elevation change on a sphere also. You'd have to account for that, and they're not. That's your point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so they acknowledge it, but then in terms of the boundary being delimited or set, it's independent of that because the actual boundary extends vertically. The undulation doesn't. Let's say the elevation change doesn't affect that because of the method.
Right, but they then go on to explain how they're going to use a flat baseline. Yeah. So they're going to take an average. Now, if you take not an average, just a principle that applies all over in spite of the undulations, right? That's what they're doing.
Can I comment?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping somebody will at some stage.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you read documents. I always like to go to the end and the beginning, and then later take time with what's in the middle. Because the beginning kind of sets out what they want to do. At the end, it's a nice, concise summary of what they said in the middle, which is usually bogged down with a lot of details. And you lose it unless you have the beginning and end. The middle is tough. But if you have that, the middle starts making sense. So in the old days, people referred to Earth as an irregular plane. And if someone says to me, what do you think the Earth is? I say, it's an irregular plane. That's why I'm a flat earther. And so obviously I know there's hills, valleys, and mountains, and that's just given. But some people need that extra explanation. But when you go to the last part of this thing before the source material comes out, in the case of a straight coast, okay, straight, we know what that means. Coast, we know what that means. Or if the straight baseline method is followed, okay, straight baseline. Oh, another method than this circle arc method, a straight baseline method. So there's a secondary method to do the same measurement. The arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line, meaning the circle method produces the same results as a straight baseline method. So it's the doublespeak. It's just a language put there to make you think you're on the globe. But it's just telling you it's going to work the other way just as well, because they did it the other way first and then put it on a globe.
Right. It's one thing saying it in text just to lay the seeds or leave the seeds or however you want to metaphorically describe this. It's another to show a curved radius to a 2D circle, which is the problem that they'd face if they were here saying it verbally to us and putting it as an argument. Well, here in the document it says that it's the same. Well, no, you can't have a curved radius. You know, that doesn't work once you describe it on a sphere. You can't get any angle measurements, and you don't have the parallel. How did they describe it? God, it was earlier on in the citation that was read out by Zygote. But they're describing having it parallel. Well, you can't do any of those things on a sphere.
No, and this same thing that we're seeing here is done with the sextant. Yeah. Later today, if I may, let me plug Mitchell's show. Adam and I will be on Mitchell from Australia's show today. So subscribe to him. And we'll be talking about to dip or not to dip. That is the correction. Now you say, why are you bringing that up after this article? Well, it's very simple. The sextant can be used several ways. One way is at sea, using the natural horizon. The other way is on land, blocked by hills and buildings. The third way is in the sky in an airplane. You say, all right, well, what's the method? There's something that these three methods are doing has to coincide to get the right equation to work out where you're going, where you are in relationship to the star that you're sighting. There's something in those three that has to correspond to each other. Well, look at the title, to dip or not to dip. That is the correction. Which one of those three is dip measurement required? The one at sea. Which one of those three dip correction is not required? The one on land and the one on the airplane, 30,000 feet in the air or 40 or whatever. Or third-story building, for goodness sake, anywhere. No dip required. And the reason there's no dip required is because you can attain the very essence of what the sextant needs by the artificial horizon and the bubble sextant, because all you're establishing is horizontal. You need a horizontal, a baseline. Now at sea, you're using the natural horizon. You're on a ship or a small yacht. You have to get to sea level to get that horizontal. That's where you take height of eye of wherever you are and take it to sea level. That's the dip correction, so that you can match the bubble sextant horizontal and the artificial horizon horizontal. It's the same there. It's over for the ballers. They need a 90.
Got a flat Earth with this example, and it starts with a flat Earth and moves on to begging the question. And in the responses so far, they seem to think that sort of stepping over the fact that they've got to take a measurement in the first place is going to justify them starting by begging the question because they're so used to it. and makes life a lot easier for us when we just say, where'd you get the angle measurement? You know, as soon as they start begging the question, it's like, well, you had to make an measurement first. Where'd you get it? And the answer is from a flat plane, every single time.
Yeah, and this document says, from a legal way, there's no difference between the arcs of circle method or the straight baseline method. Who's pulling the wool over whose head? Circles are not straight lines. Something's going on here.
Pull the wool over the eye, not the head.
I've heard some of these guys try to argue that the dip correction is to do with the curvature.
Well,
It's ridiculous.
If it does, it's added in different periodicals. But when you go to the sources that say what it is in the most succinct manner, as we're going to show when we talk about to dip or not to dip, that is correction on Mitchell's show later today, it's height of eye above sea level. Simple as that.
A bit of housekeeping. So, any evidence of a physical geometric spheroid horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth? I don't think this is going to get far, this housekeeping session, because Adam's just joined. Given that he posted it to us, I'm pretty sure he's going to want to talk about it. Hey, Adam.
Hi, guys. Talk about what? Sorry, I've been... Oh,
right, okay. Any evidence of Earth curve?
Not since we last spoke, no. I'd posted something. I'd seen that thing that Righteous said. Is that what you're on about? That?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just seen that literally. I was grabbing a cup of coffee, so I went and found the document to have a read later on today. But yeah, it does. It's talking, as far as I can see, about circles of equal altitude defining coastlines, but it's not. But it is the UN plotting them on a flat discussion. It's just circles drawn on the map. So that's the bit I could see, but it's a very long document, so there might be more in there. 38 pages. So it's a right long bedtime read. But it's UN stuff, which is quite interesting. It's talking about territorial designations, and like I say, how it's done, it does appear to be flat.
Yeah. It's quite a revelation. I mean, I didn't expect this show to start that stuff. I almost completely decided to forego housekeeping, but now you've joined. I'm glad this conversation is going to continue. Certainly intriguing enough to look at more, isn't it, Adam?
Well,
I can comment a little bit on that. So a little bit more. So from the legal perspective, I think the significant finding here is that it's referred to and it's actually used in a case. So this is this is already accepted law. So it's like a legal authority. So there's no disputing this anymore. But from a legal perspective, of course you can argue, but that doesn't change reality. So it's not just speculation, it's actually applied in the case.
What you're saying is that when we hear stories on the news about other countries violating international fishing water, because each country that has a coastline from the coast out to the sea, that's territorial water, and other countries can't come there and take out their fish. They can stay outside of that, and that's currently happening with countries now. That's what this sounds like they needed this for, so they can know the boundaries as well.
Yeah,
it is a legal settling on how to divine in tricky circumstances. So the bit I'd skim read is talking about drawing circles of equal altitude into the vast sea around the most sticky out point to define your personal waters before it gets to international. And then it's talking about points where those would overlap between two territories. and in which case to necessitate to define the median point and draw the line boundary there. It's not specifically flat, I don't think. It's a legal point, but it's not. It's all. And this Article 5 straight baselines got me excited, but that's talking about the lines, how you draw them onto maps. If the coastline's wobbly, as coastlines tend to be, that it's not practical to draw a wobbly boundary. So you can draw a straight baseline approximating to the coast at certain distances, but there's no mention of the ball. There's no discussion as far as I can see of the ball, but I want to try and pick out and see if we've got any specifics that relate to it being.
Adam, in the document, does it say circle of equal altitude?
Yeah.
Okay. Well then, let me jump on this then. Because I haven't read the document, but if it says circle of equal altitude on the document, then here where it says the arcs of circles method produces the same result as strictly parallel line, which is the straight baseline method, then that's a 2D circle with the radius coming out, and you're somewhere on that circle. It's a flat line. That's the arc. It's not an arc like a 3D arc. It's just the arc of a flat circle. Has to be if they're saying circle of equal altitude. But again, I'll read it too.
It's talking about plotting it on maps, if I'm being honest. Yeah. I'd like to pull more out of it, and there might be more in there, but the bit I'm seeing is just talking. It's only in the way in which it's defining it. It is defining it flat because it's talking about circles on flat maps. So it's not making any amendment to translate that onto a ball or how they might be different. But all it's doing here is literally just about plotting on maps with circles. They're not so much circles of equal altitude in that sense, but they are because they're a true circle on the ground. And that's all it's saying. When it's talking about the arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line, that sounds quite interesting. But what it's meaning is you draw circles all the way along the coastline and then just join those points up at the sticky points, and that's equivalent to the parallel line. So this is just, they're nice words, but they're not, I don't think they're relating against the ball. They're just relating to cartography, I think, really.
The way I saw it was that the first, the actual case citation does the link, because it says that a method which is constantly used for determining the position of a point or object at sea is a new technique insofar as the method for delimiting the territorial sea. So what's the method for determining the position of a point or object at sea? Because that's the method they're talking about. Or that's the method they applied to draw these boundaries.
Where's that in the document? Which?
Oh, this is in the fisheries case, the actual case.
Oh, within a case.
Yeah, page 129.
I'm happy for you to look this up. There's no pressure. I don't mind if there's dead air in this regard, so don't feel like there's any pressure on either of you to keep the conversation going when it's this juicy.
That would seem a more pertinent route to take. Sorry, what's your name, dude?
Zygote.
Like a hi. That would seem a more sensible route to take of what you highlighted there. That if there's a methodology that the court and the UN are recognising to define this, how that methodology works, that would seem, because it's recognised, isn't it? So you've just got to find what it is and define how it works. That would then indicate whether the UN is accepting these and their laws of the sea on a flat map, or whether they're going to put it onto a theoretical ball. And I would imagine in a court of law, it's going to be relating to the laws of the sea and not theoretical ball. But that seems the sensible route to take, is to find what you've highlighted there. If they're saying there's a defined method, is to find that method.
Cool. Is there any more on this?
Not for me, because this is going to take a little research, but just from the summary, like I read here, in the case of a straight coast, or if the straight baseline method is followed, the arcs of circles method produces the same result as a strictly parallel line. I mean, I'm good with that, but it's going to be interesting to dig into it, see what the law case was, what was what is this fishery, Anglo-Norwegian fishery case all about, what was the complaint, and then they go into the details. But that last summary pretty much says it.
Can you read it out again? And then we'll round out on that note.
Yeah, in the case of a straight coast, or if the straight baseline method is followed, the arcs of circles method produces the same result as a strictly parallel line.
And can you translate that into flat Earth versus globe Earth English?
Let's go a little word by word then. In the case of a straight coast, we know what straight is, and we know what a coast is. At least we do. I don't know about the anti-flat earthers, because they have a different definition for straight. Or if the straight baseline method is followed, okay, that's pretty simple. That's the adjacent on the right hand, a 90-degree right angle. The baseline method is followed. The arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line. Well, we know parallel lines don't cross, and we know they're not circles, they're lines. So, wow, a blow to the globe doublespeak here. I see it.
I don't.
I do, because what they do is they measure a flat, then they say we live on a ball, then they put in words like arcs and circles, but it was never arcs and circles to begin with. It was always flat.
Well, Adam, I know you've already expressed your objection once, but
I think this is generally a cartography description, what's going off here. So the arcs and circles. So the arcs and circles are what you draw from the coastline at a distance t, defined internationally or locally between people. These arcs and circles you draw off the coast, and that then defines your territorial water. What they're saying there is you can use the arc and circle method. It will produce the same result as drawing strictly parallel line along the general route of the coast. That's my very basic understanding of what I've read so far.
Well, I'm saying the same thing, but
Yeah,
I'm saying the anti-flat earthers, arcs and circles are something else to them. This is just a two-dimensional circle.
So the only bit of flat earthing that I can see is, again, with their arcs and circles, they're going to have a bendy R, aren't they? A bendy T length, because that would be their R, but if their R is going onto a ball, it hits that same problem that Rob Durham's doing. But that's the only bit of flat earth, ball earth I can see in there. It's that same. If you apply a circle on a map, it makes sense. If you then translate it to the ball, that R value, that T value is perverted and changed. It's not.
Correct. So basically what you're saying, now that I hear you, is they do a series of circles, much like circle of equal altitude with 3 sidings, and where they cross 3 times, that's where your location is as an observer. So they do a bunch of circles, and wherever they cross, they draw a straight line.
Yeah, a bunch of circles all the way along the coastline, and where those circles are in the sea, that's what defines your territorial water. So each circle's got the same R value, and you put it on the coast, and you draw the circle, and 5 miles out from that peninsula, that's where your territorial water ends. And you go along the coast, drawing these circles, and it will define your territorial water, I think.
Right.
You can take a similar sort of straight line, parallel method, and stuff.
Then we're
like that.
saying
I'm reading
It's the
that.
same as drawing a parallel line, right, to the coast.
Yeah, I think so. But I said I've only skim read it past hours. So.
then we're saying the same thing, because I'm speaking from the viewpoint of our opposition. Will say, oh, arcs of circles. That means no, that's not that arc of that circle. This is a two-dimensional, just like a circle of equal altitude with a radius equidistant from each from each point, from that one point. That is.
Yeah, that's how I see it also, because they also contrast it to other methods. So basically, they say that this is it's a method that produces sort of a reasonable end result in drawing the territorial limit. So there are other methods of doing it, but this method that they happen to use and happen to acknowledge here is called the arcs of circles method. And that method, when it's applied, it's also acknowledged in the case to be constantly used for determining the position of a point or object at sea, which means basically navigation. So
yeah, you see, once you've drawn that, sorry, carry on.
No, that's it.
That I think is the one. Once you've defined that point at sea on a map, then there has to be a methodology to define it at sea, if you see what I mean, which is going to be navigation, isn't it? To be there. How do you define whether you're in international waters or not? So that methodology of where you're taking the fish from has to have a way of it being defined legally. So you could say, well, I use this method, and I was definitely in British waters. They weren't Norwegian fish. Yeah. So there has to be a methodology that the law will recognise to say whether or not you were or were not in Norwegian or British waters. That I think would be what is that methodology that the courts recognise? That would be the next step where I'd be trying to find, if you could find that would be what would be.
Maybe it says in the document, but we're going to have to go through it. I mean, having them say it's the same as acquisition of your position at sea, that would be celestial navigation. But having it be the same as, what is the actual method? So we'll have to find that out.
Riley's still got access to his databases, because this is a law question. His law stuff would be really helpful. Give me a shout later and see.
Who, Anthony?
Yeah.
I said that originally. I was like, I'd be interested to see his take on this, because he'd scan read through it and go to the right bit that's relevant probably quicker than all of us.
And it seems a legal point to me, anyway. You're asking the UN and the court to make a statement legally as to what methodology is being accepted. That's a flat method. That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be nice to get his take on it. Obviously, we're not going to be doing housekeeping now. We're at least halfway through the show, so given I couldn't even get the first question, and it's not really housekeeping if it's done after the halfway mark. So I think we will actually forego housekeeping today.
Gonna get a mic check.
Hey Neil, we got a video check from you.
Sorry, I just got kicked off my job.
For what?
Somebody fell off a scaffold and died.
And that was your fault?
Nah, but they shut the whole freaking thing down. So terrible, right before the holidays.
What job, Neil? What do? You do construction or steel or what?
Yeah, 85 J Street, Brooklyn, New York.
Makes toy globes.
Yeah, I do the flooring. So I sent a picture showing how I level the floors. It could be level, and also it could be flat, but not level, and that's just smooth. optimistic.
That's cool. I was just wondering because I build the steel for the skyscrapers in New York.
Can you see a decent skyline from where you are, Neil?
When I'm up in the building, yeah. Why?
No, from the ground now.
Not really. It's too much stuff in the way.
No worries.
You can when you go across the river. When you're in New Jersey, you can see across the river. You can see the whole skyline and the base
Oh,
too.
beautiful.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, why? What am I looking for if I do see the skyline?
Nothing. I just wanted to see. I just wanted you to put it on camera just to give us something nice to look at. That was all.
Oh, then I gotta find someone.
We'd be
I'll come
2/3.
back.
We'd normally be 2/3 of the way through housekeeping, but something else has come to light. So we haven't, housekeeping's supposed to be 5 minutes at the beginning of the show. That never is. It's just, get this out of the way quick, just to see if anybody's come up with anything from the globe side in these regards. Has anybody shown a curved adjacent yet? When everyone says no, somebody might come along and go, normally Anthony, who understands the concept, when he gets to the gravity question, he'll be like, actually, yes. And then he'll present what he's been presented or, what he's debunking. And so it moves on. So it's like housekeeping is supposed to be 5 minutes unless somebody's got something to add to it. Now, today, this would be in regards to the first question. So any evidence you can have a curved adjacent when measuring an elevation angle? Well, that's what we're talking about in this regard, right? And Adam's saying, well, other than the fact that it's got to be a flat baseline, I don't see anything other than that that's a flat earth proof. They're just talking about the cartography of it, right, and the layout. But then 10th Man goes, yeah, but when you say other than it being a stone cold flat earth proof, we're both talking about the same thing then. But yeah, in terms of how it stacks up legally, that precedent's probably out there somewhere, and we'd need to know what it is in terms of what they say it's the same as when they compare it to celestial navigation. That's where we're at. Hence, negating the need for housekeeping, because curved adjacent's what we're talking about. That's why it's at the front of the list of housekeeping questions at the moment. I kind of expect this to be the things that come across our way in the near future, more and more.
Well, how do you even do that sort of geometry with a curved line?
You don't.
I mean, isn't that sort of geometry reliant on all lines being straight?
Yes, it is. That's correct. Nobody's working out international waters and territory disputes using curved geodesics and bent radii.
There's also a temporal point here because this case is from 1951. So what methods were available at that point? For the positioning of an object at sea.
Well, theodolites were around, sextants were around.
I'm just thinking about it from the ball side. Like, if you've got a curve, you need to somehow turn that into a straight, flat line to be able to then do any geometry. So that's exactly what they must do. Just somehow straighten that curved line and then do the geometry and then get the result and then imagine that that's actually on a curved surface. They have to somehow turn that curved line into a straight one before they can go any further.
I have a book called Surveying and Leveling Instruments. It's a selected book for safekeeping. 1901 is the date. William Ford Stanley. And he goes through all the instruments for surveying and leveling. And this table of contents is rich with topics, but basically, let me see what the last page is. Very thick, over 500 pages. And it's showing in pictures all the different surveying tools that man has used that they can categorize and explain. It's fantastic. This is a rich resource in the research I was doing. So yeah, it's been around.
But the list of techniques that you could use over ultra long distances, surely that would be a much shorter list.
Why they were navigating the oceans back in 1700s.
Well, Amelia Earhart and all of them had a sextant for their ocean journeys. Land, they've had the lights and all kinds of other instruments that work on the same method, where it's got to be set to level before you even use it. So this is why in the ocean, when there's no landmarks, the horizon is the only landmark you got. And it's horizontal, flat. And that's why
so
you use that.
so let's look at this. So what it says is that the arcs of circles is a method which is constantly used for determining the position of an object at sea, and they say this in 1951.
Yeah, that's
Can it be
circle of
anything
equal
else except sextant?
It's circle of equal altitude. There's only because it gives you the radii from the ascendant position, the GP of the star is straight line to you. It's a radius.
Yeah, so
On
arcs
that
of circles has to mean that, because it says that. But if this is some kind of a term of art for something else, then what was available that would be constantly used in 1951 for the same purpose? I don't think there are many alternatives there.
Well, at sea, you got rocking motion, so that's why they don't use a bubble sextant. And because of the same rocking motion, you don't use an artificial horizon. The only time you can use those two at sea is if it's perfectly calm water.
No, sorry to interrupt. I don't think he means that. I think he means, when he says use that, he means the sextant. What other tools have they got to use? And you're like, well, they can't use the artificial horizon with the sextant, and they can't use the bubble at sea with the sextant. So, yeah, you're kind of talking past each other a little bit. But you're saying, what other tools have they got? They've got the sextant, and how does the sextant work? Well, it works on a flat plane.
Yeah.
Well, they can go to an octant, they could go to a quadrant, they can use the older versions of the sextant, the astrolabe and all that. But why? When you got the nicer sextant that also gives you the micrometer drum in degrees and minutes. So
perfect. That's what he was asking. That's what he was fishing for. What are the methods? You've just detailed them. So you said what was it? The two things that you just said?
Well, the cross staff, the octant, excuse me, the cross staff, the octant, the quadrant, they all astrolabe, they all led to the sextant now that we have.
They're just devices. They're not methods.
Right, they're all devices.
The method is what are we using? Are we using GPS to determine this position? No, we can't be doing this. The guy's saying it's 1950s. Are we using the WGS 84? No, it's not 30 years to be invented yet. So what are the charts? How do we ascertain a point on the chart? Sorry, I'm sounding like Eli. I'm eating. That to me is the method. Whatever equipment, a sextant, octant, staff, doesn't matter, because that's going to be employed within the method of defining it, which is, I think, different to the measuring device.
I see. So you're taking it one step back, where he's asking what other tools have they got available. You're saying, well, forget what tools are available, because there's all sorts of tools that can apply to the only method that's going to be used, and that's triangulation in this regard.
Yeah, and I think that's the point legally that will be interesting. If this in law is defined via the laws of the sea, navigational charts, and not via any kind of new modern arbitrary system, but it's defined in law that way, then that's in law flat, isn't it?
Well, hold on. Let's just address that. Even if they did, you said your other method was triangulation or whatever they're going to claim it is with satellites and GPS, right? But that's still just going to be using three-dimensional flat grids, right? It's not going to be using anything different, is it?
To me, it's the document that the documents they use. So if they're referring to ball cartography, then they're doing it on a ball, aren't they, in law? But if they're using old standard stuff, then that has no mention of fear in it, does it? So,
Well, that's the bit I'm questioning. Sorry, I could have phrased it better. What is ball cartography?
it's not a real thing. We've demonstrated that it doesn't work. You can't do cartography. You can't navigate on a ball. You can't draw all these things out on a ball. They don't work. As demonstrated by Rob.
Perfect, perfect. So, in answer to your question, I think it was Zygote. What are the tools? Well, what are the methods? Well, all of them are going to be based on a flat plane. You know why? It's the newest housekeeping question. You can't have a curved adjacent when measuring an elevation angle. It is that simple. All of the methods prior to now, and including GPS, are all basically doing the same thing. Working on a grid.
Don't we have a recording from one of the opposition saying everything's from Cartesian references and then put into GPS?
I think it's Wolfie.
It's a killer statement coming from their own side.
The more you dig, the more you find it's got to work flat. And I know nobody on the panel's sort of expressing their excitement. We're all a bit dubious because we've been here before and we're used to opponents pulling out tiny little details that they claim will debunk it if we start jumping up and down and pulling the party popper strings. Well, yeah, because we've dealt with this sort of stuff before, we're hesitant. It's come up on a live show, so none of us are going to sort of, tell everyone to pop open the champagne. On the other hand, this is not surprising. Does this shock anybody on our side? No. We already know how it all gets navigated. So, does it shock us that we're finding documents that affirm that? Not really. But that's the kind of the reason why I sleep well at night and the anti-flat earthers don't.
Nathan, I would be your fiercest opponent on this subject if I knew we lived on a globe. But all my research has shown me we live on an irregular plane and that celestial navigation needs a right angle triangle with a straight baseline from the GP of the star to the observer. 2 or more gives you a fixed triangulation. The research alone and the obvious nature of, no Earth-based Coriolis and all this stuff. I mean, you would have to, on purpose, deny reality to be a baller today, especially in the light of all the evidence we're showing.
It seems like, based on Adam's last statement, if there are no cartography methods that are incorporating 8 inches per mile drop, which we've shown time and time again, you've only got to go to Google Earth and draw an elevation profile, and you can see it's done in a square box with a flat baseline and no drop. So, given that that's the case, I'm sure there's going to be other examples where the ball hasn't been factored into a legal scenario in this regard. Because how can it be? We're not on a ball. It's just a religion. So it's not going to be factored into any legal entities. If it was, there'd be people all over the place trying to scam more land. Because you could claim, well, the measurement's got to be larger because I'm going over the arc length over the top of the flat plane you use with a circle of equal altitude to divvy out the land. I want to use this ball geometry because that gives me a greater distance on the radius value or the half radius value. So if I've got a curved arced radius, that means that when I measure it, it's longer. That means my land's bigger. Well, I mean, you could blag the system if there was such a thing as ball earth cartography. But, maybe someone can tell me what that is. Because so far, every time you look into it, shockingly, yeah, it's based on a flat plane. Not shockingly, sarcasm, in case anyone wasn't detecting that. 7 years down the line, I'm not needing time off for stress because my paradigm's getting changed every time I get into an argument with a fundy. Quite the contrary. It's like, oh, right, another proof of flat Earth. Oh, what are you going to do? They're all over the place because it's flat. Point proven. You can tell by the shock and awe and excitement in my panel and in Discord. You can almost taste it, can't you, audience? The excitement.
So you say that because you know it's me that's got to sit there for 2 hours, read the blogger, and then say these are the good bits. I think you're right. We were saying the other night, Mitchell and me and Tam were chatting, and these things come up. We enter them with open eyes and excitement as we're reading them, yeah? Not in any fear that something's going to pop out the page and suddenly prove it's a ball, because the more and more we research, all we get is more and more detail, yeah, and understanding. Historically, everybody's viewed it as flat, and it's like we're getting into the sex and stuff. As you start to understand it really properly, you realise mathematically it's described as flat. You know, so there's never a point now where we're entering into any topic where there's a boogeyman behind the page for us. But for them, they must be leaping out page after page for them. Each line creates problems for them, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So,
well, that's what we are, a constant problem, like a constant flow of water. So while in the pre-show I was talking about them taking the tactic to try and starve us in debate, well, if we just don't discuss it with them, then the problem goes away. It's like, no, it's more like a flowing river that's trying to be dammed up. The information's flowing because it's just the fact of life. We are on a flat plane, and that's going to get discussed. The dam's been breached. But if you imagine it as a flowing river with a series of dams, and everyone who's on the banks, being the anti-flat earthers, wanting to stop the flow of the river. Now, meanwhile, we're on, inflatables with cocktails just floating around in a dammed up bit. Going, yeah, I don't care if you dam it up. It's just going to crack. It's just going to fail. And then occasionally it does, and, you flow through the cracks, and as you do, you see all these anti-flat earthers throwing stones at you, but you just end up in another pool with your cocktail, hopefully still there. But then, further down the river, the reason you're in another pool floating around, not losing any sleep, bobbing along drinking a cocktail, is because somebody further down the river's going, we've got to stop this flow! There's something else they've come out with. Look what they've shown us from this International Law Society. We've got to stop the flow, got to stop it. Well, I'm not trying to stop any new flow of globe information that's coming our way. That stopped like a year and a half into debate. Like, there wasn't anything else new under the sun. For us, there's always new stuff coming out. That's why I love the subject. That's why I picked it for my YouTube career. I'm like, oh, this will never get old. This has got longevity. Oh, yeah, great. An evergreen subject. When do you ever find, ever, on YouTube, an evergreen subject that's not completely already exploited? Never. It just doesn't happen. When I came across Flat Earth, I was like, wow, that's amazing. Evergreen subject that not everybody's already completely infected and it's totally, oversaturated. Well, before it got to the chance of any sort of saturation, we had the kibosh put on us. Doesn't change the fact that the subject's still evergreen. And if I've got a good enough, dedicated enough audience sharing the show, the information's never going to change from the globe Earth perspective. There's nothing new under the sun. They don't come out with anything new. But they've constantly got to dam up the waters as we dig through basically anything. Go, here you go, look how this shows it's flat. And they go, no, in paragraph 4, the guy said, but it's still a sphere. All right, that's a wonderful evidence when the entire basis of the cartography was based on flat Earth. But one sentence you cherry-picked, the guy expresses his personal opinion in the document. Wow, that's amazing evidence. Yeah, he's still describing how he measures it and navigates it flat. What are you going to address with that? Well, Nathan's very rude. That's what we get. That's the newest thing we get, new ad homs.
Nathan, can you go to the one slide in Master B, and I'll let Neil talk while you do that.
I think they're wondering why it's taken us so long. Think about that. Like, boy, these people are taking a long time to figure out that we're on a flat Earth.
Or the other way of looking at that, Neil, is that it's taken this long for the paradigm that's completely false to get exposed. We don't know where we are in history in terms of, are they ramping down the heliocentric claim? Or are they ramping it up? I don't know. For all we know, it's only been in existence for, at the bare minimum, I've got to be honest, about 150 years. But if that is the case, then it's ramping up. They're trying to give us a one-world religion. that one world religion's heliocentrism, and we're on an upward arc. And if we persist, the censorship will just have to increase. But it won't be censorship that's put out there and the public are told about. It'll just be under the radar. Well, put a line through his name, not under it anymore. And no one will know.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Brian.
I think it's kind of a judgment day, but I'm not talking about it being... I reckon it is kind of part of Judgment Day itself. Let's just say let's say the more biblical Judgment Day, but it's kind of it's like a weeding out process that some people are doing to find out. It's like as if they're finding out either who would be their greatest enemies or who would be thinking like them. Let's just say there's some people out there who are in positions of power, and it's like as if they are allowing a game to take place.
Go on then. I've got a couple of minutes left on the live show, Brian. You got anything to support this, or can we move on to 10th man's diagram on there?
Speculation. One speculation. But I will say, it's like you have said yourself that it's like a paradigm shift. But somebody is controlling this paradigm shift. If you see it as kind of like a game that you don't realize you're in, or a weeding out process. I don't have maybe the correct term, but they're trying to find out who will see through the lie and who won't, and even those that do, who will truly see through it, or who will excel at it, or that kind of thing.
Okie dokie. Thank you for that, Brian.
Well, it could mean that your YouTube channel could be massive in years to come. Or it could mean that nobody will know of us.
Like the guy yesterday, hope springs eternal. 10th, got your celestial sextant bodies. Sorry.
That's not
celestial body sextant angles.
Can we ask for a shout out, 10th? Yeah.
Go on.
Well, just before we round out, because after show will be too late. But yeah, me and 10th are on Mitchell's tonight, aren't we? To dip or not to dip. So yeah, if anyone's about 7 o'clock UK time, me and 10th's going to go over.
Do you want to put your Shakespearean whatever?
I'll tell you what I'll do.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'll do. No.
I'll
save it. I'll save it until the after show, so that it only premieres on Mitchell's. But then all of Nathan's members will see it.
All right, that's
as
fair.
well, and then it'll go out on the real, won't it?
You want to be on the after show to see this magnificent document of history we found. It's phenomenal.
Okay, well, a shout out to America Silver Patriot, who says, hats off to you guys. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Right, let's take my thumbnail off with legally flat to dip or not to dip, what I've titled today's show, and stick on the sextant celestial body angles.
Yes, this is from a navigation site. It's not something I did. But as you can see here with the boat and the right angle triangle to get the initial sextant reading. Is it on screen? People can see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So is this the way you do it? Teeter-totter? I mean, this is funny. If you look at the ship, the hull is out of the water. So if you were to tip this, to put the ship on the globe, that right angle would be aiming towards some star in the sky, and that baseline wouldn't be on Earth anymore. If you did it the other way, only a part of that baseline would be on a curved surface, and the ship would be off the water. They're showing you their problem in this one picture. They are showing you how navigation is done with a right angle, triangle, to the observer with a sextant. After dip correction is done to get it to the ocean level, as shown here, and that sun image, that sun is directly over the Earth somewhere. But based on this picture, it's sideways. It's not a 90. This is the best one picture debacle of the whole system right here. They need the top one to be right, but they can't work on a curved surface. But if you take away the globe and put a flat Earth, it works perfectly. I'm done.
with that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels, and everyone who hit the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of note if you drive an electric vehicle. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.